Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a truly fascinating story. It's all about solving a massive, paralyzing urban crisis using this brilliant combination of cutting-edge foreign tech and just incredibly resilient local ingenuity. We're going to explore the rise, the day-to-day operations, and the lasting legacy of Tapal Energy Limited. They were a pioneering, independent power producer that really stepped up when the megacity of Karachi was quite literally sitting in the dark.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap. First up, the 1994 power crisis. Then, we'll step inside the peaker plant itself. After that, we'll look at the business of power, followed by the incredibly important human element, building a local workforce. And finally, we'll wrap up with the company's legacy and their shift towards green energy.
But before we get into all the heavy machinery, I want you to think about something. When most people hear the name Tapal, you instantly think of tea, right? The Tapal family is famous for their massive, nationwide tea business. Yet, led by Chairman Aftab F. Tapal, this family made a staggering, completely unexpected leap. They jumped from consumer goods straight into the heavy industrial reality of building a massive thermal power plant right from scratch. To really understand why they took that leap, we've got to look back at the environment of the mid-1990s.
All right, Section 1, the 1994 power crisis, a metropolis in the dark.
Picture this. It's the early 1990s, and Karachi, Pakistan's largest city and its absolute industrial heart, was facing a desperate, chronic power shortage. To secure the national energy future, the government of Pakistan launched the landmark 1994 private power policy. This essentially invited private investment by offering sovereign risk cover. So in 1994, Tapal Energy Limited was officially formed. Just a year later, in 1995, they signed a power purchase agreement with K Electric. And remarkably, by June 20th, 1997, they achieved their commercial operations date. That original defining 22-year agreement ran its full, uninterrupted course all the way until 2019.
Now, it's crucial to understand that this wasn't just your standard business venture set up to generate a profit. Well, it was, but it was designed specifically to alleviate the chronic power shortages paralyzing Karachi. It was a literal lifeline. Karachi's District West, which includes vital industrial areas like Site, was struggling just to keep the lights on. Tapal Energy became this vital, stabilizing factor that allowed industries to run, homes to have light, and the city to survive its energy drought.
Moving right along to Section 2, inside the peaker plant, the machine that powers a city. The technical marvel of what they built on that 20 to 25-acre campus out on Hub River Road is just awe-inspiring. Let's bust some industry jargon right out of the gate. You'll often hear Tapal Energy referred to as a peaker plant. So what does that actually mean? Basically, think of a peaker plant like a giant instant-on backup generator for an entire city. It doesn't necessarily run at full throttle all day, every day. Instead, it provides quick start capacity during the peak summer months or periods of extremely high demand. It's there to make sure the entire grid doesn't collapse under pressure.
To put the scale of this backup power into perspective, we're talking about 126 megawatts of gross capacity. That is a massive, massive amount of energy that this single facility, run by just 70 to 100 people, can rapidly inject directly into K Electric's grid to keep the metropolis moving.
Now, what's really interesting here is the ultimate safety net of this facility, the concept of a black start. What this means is that if Karachi suffers a total, catastrophic grid blackout, this facility doesn't need electricity from the outside grid to turn its own engines on. It can literally wake itself up, generate power independently, and then start sending electricity out to jumpstart the rest of the city's grid. Pretty incredible, right?
So how does the whole shebang actually work? Let's walk through the generation process step by step. First, heavy fuel oil, or HFO, is procured and stored in these massive on-site tanks. Step 2 is where the magic happens. The fuel is combusted inside 12 roaring Wärtsilä 18V38 diesel engines. For Step 3, those engines are coupled with ABB generators, which produce power at 11 kilovolts. And finally, Step 4, step-up transformers boost that power to an immense 132 kilovolts, feeding it directly out into the grid. It's an absolute symphony of heavy engineering.
Okay, Section 3, the business of power, adapting to survive.
You know, building the plant was only half the battle. Survival meant adapting to a dramatic shift in how power is bought and sold. And this brilliantly illustrates that shift. Originally, under their 22-year power purchase agreement, Tapal Energy operated on a take-or-pay model. This meant they were guaranteed revenue regardless of whether the grid actually needed them to dispatch power that day, which frankly was a necessary guarantee to attract private investment back in the 90s. But after 2019, the rules of the game changed. Today, they operate on short-term extensions until 2029 on a modern, super agile take-and-pay model. Now, K-Electric only pays for the electricity they actually consume. Tapal has to be incredibly cost-efficient and ready at a moment's notice to survive in this new era.
You don't pull something like this off alone. Setting up this business required an incredible international consortium. Wärtsilä Diesel from Finland provided the engines. The Marubeni Corporation from Japan and Seath Energies from the USA brought in the heavy investment and expertise. And the engineering and construction, handled by the power construction company BV out of the Netherlands. It was just a massive transfer of international technology directly into Pakistan.
Which brings us to Section 4, building a local workforce, the human element.
Look, bringing in fancy foreign engines is great, but who's going to keep them running 24/7 in a tropical climate? Tapal Energy knew they faced a massive risk here, technical brain drain. Once they trained local engineers to operate complex Finnish machinery, those engineers suddenly became highly desirable to wealthy power plants over in the Middle East. To counter this, Tapal instituted an aggressive market-plus compensation strategy. They intentionally offer above-market salaries along with specialized technical and site allowances specifically to retain their highly specialized staff right there in Karachi.
You can really see that heavy investment in talent retention when you look at the compensation structure. A trainee engineer starts at up to 50,000 Pakistani rupees a month, following a highly structured progression path. An assistant manager commands around 220,000, and the general manager of the plant, they earn upwards of 850,000 rupees plus executive benefits. It's a lean, highly technical setup that heavily rewards expertise.
You know what? That investment paid off big time, resulting in what I consider the real triumph of this story. Tapal Energy operates with a 100% local workforce. Many of their senior engineers have literally been with the plant since it opened its doors in 1997. Because they've managed to retain this incredibly deep knowledge pool, they have minimal reliance on foreign original equipment manufacturers. When those massive Wärtsilä engines need complex overhauls, the local Pakistani workforce manages it entirely in-house. Now that is absolute operational independence. Let's move to our final piece and see how this builds into Section 5. Legacy and the Green Shift, sunsetting the oil era.
So what's the big takeaway? As we look toward the future, the energy landscape is changing drastically. Tapal Energy Limited now occupies what is essentially considered a legacy status in Pakistan's energy sector, but its legacy is profound. It served as a vital, highly successful proof of concept for the entire independent power producer model in Pakistan. It demonstrated beyond a shadow of a doubt that private entities could successfully bring in complex foreign tech and run it safely and efficiently using a fully local technical workforce.
But here's the thing. The Tapal family isn't just resting on their laurels with an aging oil plant. They're showing incredible visionary focus by pivoting away from legacy oil. Directed by figures like Mustafa and Adnan Tapal, the family has expanded strategically into renewable energy. We're talking major investments like the Act Wind project in Jimpir. They recognized early on that the future is green, and they are already out there building it. Which brings us to a massive, global challenge. I'll leave you with this thought. As these legacy oil plants age out, how will our mega cities balance the urgent, necessary shift to renewables with the absolute need for instant grid stability? Renewables are for sure the future, but the wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine. Until we solve battery storage at a massive scale, peaker plants like Tapal Energy remain the vital safety net, keeping cities like Karachi from going dark. It's a fascinating transition to watch unfold. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning how the world around you is powered.